Donald Trump. A very insistent narcissist. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Many of you will be familiar with the Very series, which puts famous, well-known individuals under the Tudor scope to ascertain whether they are a narcissist and thereafter explain their behaviours against the matrix of that narcissism to enable you to understand why the individual has behaved as they have, to enable people to understand more about narcissism, to recognise the manipulations and understand the dynamics. I've previously put former President Donald Trump under the Tudor scope, and he was ascertained as a narcissist. For the heart of understanding, this is not a declaration with regard to the good or bad of the individuals concerned in this series. I leave that up to you. Quite simply, I am explaining that the individuals are narcissists, why, and then translating that behaviour thereafter to increase awareness and understanding. Real-life examples are very useful in that they are prominent, so people are drawn to them in the first place, thus increasing my reach and viewership, but also because it enables people to understand by taking a real-life example, analysing them, so many of the concepts associated with narcissism become easier to understand when you can see it in action. And that aids people in understanding their own situations further. So the Very series is a very useful series in that regard. Former President Trump is a narcissist, and, as I have explained previously, he is what is known as an upper lesser type B. This means he has no awareness as to what he is. He doesn't function with a facade. He is bold, he's brash, he's belligerent, he's bullying, and he boasts, hence upper lesser type B. He's right and you're wrong. He's big, you're small. He's correct, you're incorrect. He's brilliant, you're stupid. He's the expert, you know fuck all. He doesn't mince his words. If your view doesn't accord with his, it's incorrect, you're making it up, it's fake news. And he would deal with any threats to his control in a very blunt and brash manner. Very much the sledgehammer, the wrecking ball. Now, as I've explained previously, such an approach finds favour with certain individuals because they find that refreshing. He calls it as he sees it. He doesn't come from a political dynasty. He isn't a career politician. He's a businessman. As Bob Hoskins said in Long Good Friday, I'm not a politician, I'm a businessman. And accordingly, such an approach finds favour with people who had become disenchanted with the technocratic meritocracy, the liberalism, the experts, the people who would tell you this is how you think, but then do something differently. As I've explained previously, many within the political sphere, whether on the left or on the right, or on the far right or the not so far right, are narcissists. In order to get to that position, one has to have the narcissistic toolkit, and then, in order to survive and be effective, the narcissistic toolkit is necessary. And of course, the political environment is one which attracts many of our kind because it caters to the prime aim so brilliantly. It enables the assertion of control on a national and international scale. It allows the drawing of fuel in huge amounts. It allows the acquisition of character traits, left, right, and centre, and of course the residual benefits, contacts, the wielding of power, facades, and so forth. With Donald Trump, his style was aggressive, bombastic, belligerent, in your face. And he was very much a Marmite character. You either hated him or you loved him. And of course, he was defeated in the presidential election that took place in November 2020 amidst allegations that it was rigged. No credible evidence has emerged with regard to support that. I know that those of you who are listening will disagree with that, and you are entitled to do so. But the result stands, and even Trump's own party no longer accepts the repeated assertions that he makes with regard to the fact that he was cheated out of the election. What is interesting, of course, is that a recent video that has surfaced and has been reported on provides us with an opportunity to explain more of the narcissistic mindset using former President Donald Trump as an example. Insider reports that a video emerged on the 28th of April 2021 of Trump saying his goodbyes to Mar-a-Lago members. The video was shared by a TikTok user, and Trump tells the crowd that he's vacating his Florida resort for the summer. Speaking at an event to endorse Republican Billy Long, the former president says, "So I just want to thank everybody. This is sort of a closeout. Now we go through the summer. We'll be back in October, maybe a little bit sooner." Apparently, Insider reports that Trump advisors told Insider last week that the former president and several political aides were planning on temporarily relocating to his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. The move, which now appears to be imminent, is said to be driven by Florida's climate and Trump's political ambitions. Mar-a-Lago closes just after Memorial Day on May 31st, when South Florida weather becomes hot and muggy. It's also so that Trump can gain easy access to New York donors as he builds his post-presidency political operation. Other videos from the same night have also emerged and show Trump talking about the Maricopa County election audit in Arizona. Trump obsessively asks aides about the GOP-led audit of Arizona's 2020 election results. "Watch Arizona. Some very interesting things are happening in Arizona," he says in the clip which was being posted. In another video that has been shared on YouTube, Trump touts the Arizona audit as a sign of future audits in other states. "Let's see what they find. I wouldn't be surprised if they found thousands and thousands and thousands of votes," he says. "We're going to watch that very quickly, and after that, we'll watch Georgia, and you're going to watch Michigan and Wisconsin and New Hampshire." He then proceeds to claim that the 2020 election was stolen. "This was a rigged election. Everybody knows it, and we're going to be watching it very closely." Now, irrespective of whether you accept the election was rigged or not, the point of this analysis is to explain to you the mindset of Donald Trump as an upper lesser type B narcissist. He is completely convinced that the election was rigged. Why? Because in the world of Donald Trump, he doesn't lose. And therefore, for him to have not won the presidential election means there can only be one outcome. He was cheated. He was not beaten fairly at the polls. In his inner world, his narcissism in the unconscious repeatedly tells him, in effect, "You're Donald Trump, you don't lose." And therefore, if anybody says that you're wrong, that's fake news. If anybody says that you lost, then you've been cheated. It must have been rigged, for there can be no other explanation. Why is it that Donald Trump continues to make mention of this nearly 6 months after the election? The fact is that every time something to do with the election or the presence of Joe Biden as the President of the United States comes on Donald Trump's radar, it threatens his sense of innate control. It reminds him that he's no longer the president, and that offends his narcissism. It amounts to a threat to his control with the resultant effect that his narcissism, as a self-defense mechanism, has to reject that threat to his control. And the way to do so is that, in effect, it instructs him to repeat the mantra, "The election was rigged, I was cheated," and continues to cause him to look for evidence that supports that. Now, as I have explained elsewhere, the complexity of American elections is such that there are always issues that's been seen in nearly every single contest previously, but there hasn't been so much made of it as there was in 2020. Now, I know that some people will point to saying, well, that suggests that it was rigged. Not necessarily. The reaction of a narcissist to having their control threatened does not amount to a credible suggestion that they are correct. It just demonstrates that there has been a threat to control which causes the reaction of the narcissist. Those of you who've been a victim of narcissists will be able to point to instances where you'll have said something relatively innocuous, and the narcissist reacted with potent fury. Why? Because what you said or what you did or what you didn't say or what you didn't do threatened the narcissist's sense of control. And in order to motivate the narcissist to assert control over you and nullify the threat posed by your action or inaction, the narcissist's fury ignited, resulting in you being shouted at, or being called names, or being physically assaulted. And therefore, whenever the issue of the presidential election comes up, it offends Donald Trump's unconscious need for control. His narcissism then inspires him, motivates him, galvanizes him to reject that by stating, "I was cheated," and then to look for evidence that that was the case, and to continue to seek to right the perceived wrong. There has been plenty of legal challenges which got nowhere. And, despite the maintenance of individuals that state that the election was rigged, the fact remains that following various processes, confirmed by judges of both political persuasions, that the election result hasn't been overturned. And therefore, that would support the position that the election was not rigged. Irrespective of that, irrespective of whether you accept that or not, the point of this analysis is to demonstrate that in the world of the narcissist, the perceived wrong will be used again and again and again. Because it threatens the narcissist's control. And here, 6 months after the event, Donald Trump continues to talk about the fact that the election was rigged. He talks about the fact that there is counting going on, and he doesn't think that it would be a surprise to find thousands and thousands of votes. And interesting, the language. This was a rigged election. Everybody knows it. Well, everybody doesn't know it. Many people completely reject that notion. But again, that's the grandiosity of the narcissist, to speak in the sweeping absolute terms. Everybody or nobody, always or never. That is demonstrative of the black and white thinking that occurs. Donald Trump will go to his grave maintaining that he was cheated out of this election. Of course, one way of him to assert control is to run in 2024, and the signs are that he will do so. And there is no doubt that he had the support of many, many people because of the amount of votes that he polled. But, on the evidence as it stands, he still lost the election. But his narcissism will not allow him to accept that. And the style of his narcissism is that with certain narcissists who might believe that the election was rigged and they would pursue certain legal results which got nowhere, they would then maintain within their own group, their own cabal, that they're being cheated, but then they would move on with other matters. They might move, for instance, where greater narcissists, to string pulling to get somebody else elected and operate them behind the scenes. That is often the more common outcome, where you have an individual who has lost an election or is no longer able to stand, that they become instrumental in asserting power through a new incumbent, influencing them in terms of getting them elected, and indeed, in certain instances, pulling the puppet strings of the new incumbent from behind the scenes. That isn't Donald Trump's style. He's very much in your face, and as I have explained, that's part of his appeal to many individuals. And that is understandable. For him, it isn't about him pulling the strings behind the scenes, but being up in your face and saying, that was wrong, that's fake news, you're an idiot, you're a disgrace, you're wrong. And the fact of this result will continue every time it comes up on his radar, and it will, to threaten his control, resulting in this repeated response. There are those, of course, who've poked ridicule at him, saying, look, he just can't accept it. Here he is 6 months later, banging on in front of a crowd of tens, not thousands, not tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, just the tens, and he still won't let it go. And people don't realise the reason he won't let it go is based upon his narcissism and his need to assert control. His style of narcissism is to bring it up, and to bring it up in a public way. Because he doesn't operate with a facade, there's no sense of embarrassment about being ridiculed for standing there in front of a drum kit and telling everybody about the fact that there's an audit going on, that the election was rigged, rather than keeping his own counsel and remaining quiet and seeing what the outcome is and then dealing with things. It's very much that instantaneous, upper lesser, knee-jerk instinctive response. Threat to control must be nullified. Threat to control must be nullified. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter how, it's direct and in your face. And this video surfacing provides a useful demonstration of the ongoing behaviour of a particular narcissist to a repeated and sustained threat to control. And so similarly, with certain narcissists, this is why you will find yourself being repeatedly hoovered, because you keep coming up on the narcissist radar. Therefore, you threaten the narcissist's sense of control in some shape or form, and therefore the narcissism is moved to act to assert control over you directly. Of course, you can do much to prevent that by, first of all, staying off the radar as much as possible, thus reducing the risk of hoover triggers, and then building a solid no-contact regime so that even when you do come upon the narcissist radar, it's very difficult for the narcissist to hoover you, so that doesn't happen, or if they try, you don't even hear about it. And instead, the narcissism has to move to the indirect assertion of control or assertion in withdrawal, meaning you don't get hoovered. For Donald Trump, of course, he is able to repeatedly hoover the nation, so to speak, or hoover an audience of tens, because he is able to appear in front of them and continue to make mention of it. So this provides another useful example of narcissism in action appertaining to former President Donald Trump. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.